Welcome to East Lansing regular city council meeting, Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023. I will begin with roll call.
Councilmember Brookover. Here. Councilmember Garcia.
Here.
Councilmember Watson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Gregg.
Here.
Mayor Bacon.
Present. Next up, item 1.2, approval of the agenda. I'll look for a motion.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Moved by Councilperson Watson,
Second.
second by Mayor Pro Tem Gregg. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 1.3, approval of the minutes and closed session minutes. Regular City Council, 9 May 2023. City Council discussion only meeting, May 16th, 2023. I'll look for a motion.
Motion to approve the closed session. Minutes.
I think it's both.
Okay. To approve the closed session and minutes.
Yeah. All right, moved by Councilperson Watson. Was that seconded?
Second.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem Gregg. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All written communication received by council are posted to the online agenda packet. That's all communication received before 4 p.m. Next up, communication from the audience. Gabriel, CDBG.
Hi, thank you, Mayor Bacon, Mayor Pro Tem Gregg, Councilpersons Watson, Brookover, Garcia. Just wanted to thank you for considering the recommendation for the Community Development Block Grant budget. Supports a lot of worthy projects. Of the portion that's for community service, which is, I believe, 15% of the total grant, Haven House has a very generous award, which we're grateful for based on their current recommendation. I just wanted to say a little bit more about how we are currently serving the community and intend to serve the community in more ways and a few enhanced ways in the future. Most of you know that Haven House was founded as the Economic Crisis Center back in 1983 and has continuously served the community with emergency shelter and other housing services since then. We have not closed our doors in that time, including through COVID, and that has required us to adapt some non-congregate shelter models, which are going to continue to serve us in the future. We've also made our shelter more low barrier in terms of not just physically for the shelter environment, but trying to make sure we're as inclusive as possible with who we can serve, making sure that we're not leaving people out based on unnecessary rules or expectations. In addition to providing emergency shelter, we help families prevent homelessness. We help with rehousing services. We also help with housing stability. Particularly our Partners in Progress program works with families for up to a year after they leave shelter to help them stay comfortable in their home, which means paying rent on time and working towards larger goals. Finally, as we look towards the future, and especially as we do more of what we call shelter diversion, which means helping people stay in their homes or reach new housing without having to come to shelter, thus prioritizing shelter rooms for those who need it the most. One of the things we are going to do is continue to do work in the community, including serve as the lead agency for the Homeless Management Information System, which we took over as the lead agency in the community back in November. That means we are basically overseeing all the data management for the homeless population in all of Ingham County and Lansing. And we will continue our outreach and prevention on rehousing services with an expanded facility, which will include a lease of 1090 Abbott Road. Mr. Brookover, I know you're familiar with that. It's right across from your office there. It's also across White Hills Drive from Haven House's current location, which is 121 White Hills. As you know, perhaps we've got room for 7 families at 121 White Hills, and that generally means 7 families at a time. While those families are in the shelter, they are residents of East Lansing, and one of the things we pride ourselves on, aside from having a really high rate of exits of our families to positive destinations, in other words, they leave our shelter and they get to their own home, permanent housing destination, we're also proud of the fact that that doesn't take very long. and typically our average length of stay for a family reaching that positive destination is less than 4 weeks, which means that while we're only serving 7 families at a time in shelter, we're serving over 100 families a year with shelter and also with our other rehousing services. So I just want to, remind you of what we're doing. Thank you for the support, and I do want to let you know that it's really more critical than ever for us. There was a little bit more support for some of these critical social service agencies during peak COVID, but now we are, really back to scrambling for funding, and so I just want to again reiterate my support for the recommendation, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Public comment? Seeing none. Online?
Callers in the queue.
Thank you. Next up, item 2.3, communication from Mayor and Council. Councilperson Garcia.
Yes, I have a couple of matters here. Thank you. First of all, I want to send my thank yous for all the condolences. As you know, I didn't make the meeting last week, Tuesday, May 16th. That's when my mother passed in the early afternoon. Over the last week, I've received countless emails, phone calls, texts, messages on social media from people I know and people I don't know from this great city. In person, the flowers, the food, too much food, cards. The funerals was yesterday, and we laid my mother to rest, so I just wanted to start off by saying thank you. I went off the grid for about a week. But I was able to watch the council meeting this morning to get caught up on things for tonight. And my second thing is I do want to take the opportunity. I know last week it was mentioned that today we might be able to close out the budget, but I do have an amendment for the police budget that I'd like to discuss later on in the business agenda. So once again, thank you all for your support of my family and me.
Thank you. Councilperson Brookover.
No, thank you.
Councilperson Watson.
No, thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem Gregg.
I'm good tonight, thanks.
First and foremost, I definitely want to thank the entire city and the city staff for successful execution of another East Lansing Art Festival. Obviously, rave reviews, as always, from the broader community, and I think it was the perfect thing that was needed right now for people to kind of get back out and do some activity and kind of really feel attached to things again. And it was good news. I got good message from Chief that things went well as well on all fronts, which is always good when we have large events and things like that, and we have successful execution and things go well across the board. So just kind of a big shout out to all city staff and everyone involved in preparation and the execution of large scale events. And obviously we have so many more, there's just so many more opportunities that are on the horizon for us. I'm just looking forward to engaging with those and being a part of that. Second, just a shout out to all the seniors, East Lansing High School, and all the individuals here in the city, just watching the activities of prom this week, which is always exciting, scary seeing that many people driving their parents' cars at one time. Always a nice car, but just really beautiful. The imagery, I know it's been a tough year as well in education and the schools. It seemed like this week has been a real respite from some of that stuff, and just a really successful week for our seniors. It takes me back to the pandemic years with my seniors graduating, which was tough. So it's good seeing them getting back to normal and getting to enjoy those types of things again as a group. So good luck to them, and good luck with graduation if we don't see you prior to graduation, to all the seniors in East Lansing and beyond. Next up, City Manager's Report.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. I too want to echo your comments about the art festival and say thank you to all of the staff that worked so hard to make sure that that was just an outstanding event. It was a great weekend. The weather was perfect, and if you did not have an opportunity to go, you missed out on a really fantastic event. So thank you again to staff that worked so hard to put that together. Tomorrow we will have a wreath laying ceremony recognizing the tremendous sacrifice of those that served in our military branches and to the families that also made that sacrifice. That will be here at the Hannah Community Center at 11 a.m. Outside near the monument. Please join us in honoring those that have served our country. Our library is starting the All Together Now summer reading program that will take place between June 6th and August 7th, 2023. Information about this program can be found on the website. And then our Aquatic Center will open on June 3rd, 2023 at 11 a.m., weather permitting, and we're looking forward to that as well. And then I would once again just remind the public that Albert Al Fresco is open, and it's been very well received, and there's always activity and vibrancy going on outside there. So if you have not had an opportunity to get down, we invite you once again to come to our community and share in that event as well. Thank you.
Thank you. City Attorney's report.
I have nothing to report this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, item 3.1, approve a resolution honoring public safety professionals who responded to February 13th, 2023 MSU event. First I'll make some commentary. Then Councilperson Garcia is asked to read at least a portion of the resolution into the record. And then I want to amend the resolution a little bit, and then we'll move it forward. And then I'll have probably both chiefs I think are here will come up, and then we'll present the resolution just to keep some order to it. For this date and for this time, there really wasn't a great time to get this going. I've had this in my mind for quite some time, and I wanted there to be enough space and enough time separating the events of February 13th and allowing us to make the next natural steps in the healing process and in moving forward from it. So I think we're arriving at some of that space right now. Understand the difficulty, specifically being public facing during that time. There's elements of the events that were so difficult that I've had to rewatch even some of my own commentary and things from that to understand even some of what I was saying and what was taking place at that time. Some of it was not abundantly clear to me until I've had to rewatch it several times. And that was just being present with Chief and with others not on the front lines. So I think the importance of acknowledging our first responders and individuals who had a direct hand and were directly impacted on this, I think is paramount at this time. Our public safety professionals risk life and limb. I think at this point in time, per all consideration, we can definitely state that many lives were saved that night by the action and swift actions and essential training and other elements that came together for a tragedy, and all too frequent tragedy now in our nation. But the way we responded to it definitely saved lives and made sure a lot of people could go home that night. So I want to definitely honor both police and fire for their responses and for everything and how they move forward. What I will do when we move this to amend this, I'll look to amend this resolution. I want to make sure, I'll talk with both chiefs and make sure we include a few more lines for everyone who is on duty, lines for a line item for the entire police, fire, and support staff that was engaged in there, make sure they're all included. And then looking to the clerk, kind of in perpetuity, that we revisit this resolution for February 13th to council on each of the first council meetings of February as this comes around, and we do this annually and we remember this kind of forever. definitely beyond this council and beyond any other council, that we kind of, not in the cliche to never forget, but that we never forget the actions and swift actions of individuals and their life-saving efforts on this day. And I'll throw to Councilperson Garcia.
I would agree, and then also those on duty and many that showed up off duty. I'd also like to thank Interim Clerk Marie Wicks for writing this. Resolution honoring the heroism of first responders during the events of February 13, 2023. Today's date, May 23rd, 2023. Whereas the dedicated members of the East Lansing Police and Fire Department's first responders serve and protect our citizens, ensuring community health and safety every day. And whereas first responders regularly demonstrate professionalism and integrity while operating under extreme pressure, dangerous and often unpredictable circumstances. And whereas at 8:18 p.m. on February 13, 2023, the first 911 call took place reporting an active shooter at Michigan State University's Berkeley Hall. A devastating mass shooting killed 3 and injured 5 would ensue. And whereas police officers both on and off duty rushed to assist, one even having lost a parent that day, East Lansing firefighter paramedics immediately provided first aid and transport of the injured. And whereas during the later hours of this tragic event, and with the inevitable commencement of the investigation, first responders were tasked with the heartbreaking responsibility of keeping watch over this deceased students, Ariel Anderson, Breanne Frazier, and Alexandra Werner. And whereas in 2023 alone, there have been more than 200 mass shootings, and while it seems they occur daily, they have a profound impact on all involved. First responders who are regularly exposed to death and life-threatening events are particularly affected in ways that most non-responders cannot and do not want to imagine. And whereas in the aftermath of this egregious affront to the security and the safety of our community, first responders continue to process the unimaginable, affecting their overall health and that of their loved ones. And whereas these individuals protect and serve under their uniforms and behind their badges, they are neighbors, friends, children, spouses, siblings, and parents. Now therefore, be it resolved that East Lansing City Council and Community honors East Lansing first responders for their courage and valor under the most extraordinary of circumstances. And be it further resolved that the East Lansing City Council and community recognizes the physical and emotional sacrifices made by our first responders in response to the traumatic events of February 13th and offer grace, compassion, and empathy as they heal while they're continuing to keep our city safe.
Thank you. Now, I'll move approval of resolution honoring public safety professionals who responded to the February 13, 2023 MSU events with the recommended amendments of the additions of names of all members from both departments and separate indications of members who were on duty during that time, as well as an effort, or if this requires a separate resolution, city attorney to make sure that we acknowledge this in perpetuity, whatever that looks like, if we can find a way to do that.
That can be in the same resolution if you just request that the clerk put it on the agenda for future meetings the first week of, or the first meeting of each May, or I'm sorry, each March.
We'll move it to February. We'll do it that
February,
first
okay.
February. Okay. All right. That makes sense, City Clerk. All right, thank you. And so moved. Look for a second.
Second.
Moved by Mayor Bacon, second by Councilperson Watson. Any further discussion?
Mayor, I'd just like to just add that obviously it's very, very dear to my heart, and I said it, I think, during the event and immediately after, but just the mixed emotions of sadness that knowing that your friends, coworkers, and peers had to go through that, but then extreme pride in the fact that they did go through that and the manner in which they went through that. I still have a great deal of admiration for their efforts on that evening, and as I listened to it through the 911 calls and dispatches that were going out, there was never any reluctance to move toward the hazard, never any hesitation whatsoever. And I still say, and I feel very confident in this statement, that there are at least 3 people that are alive today because they went in and removed them, even as the scene remained unsafe. And I just want to acknowledge them once again. I thank you for doing this, and I thank you for doing this in perpetuity. And then, having said that, I know in the consent agenda we're looking at other staff members, but there are a great number of people that stepped up in so many ways, and I just personally am forever grateful, and I just wanted to say that out loud. Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Motion carries. I'll have the chief step up.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and councilpersons. I appreciate that. And just the only thing I was want to say is thank you for recognizing our staff for the work that they did. It was great. So, and the in perpetuity thing is something special for our. So that was nice to hear. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And I'll speak for both the chiefs because they were short-winded there. I want to thank you as well for your leadership. And I know even that was leadership, even in the aftermath, I know some of the repercussions and challenges that were created, just and on every level, kind of following this. It wasn't over on that day for you guys, particularly. So I appreciate your leadership and respect it, and want to celebrate that as well. So thank you so much. Next up, consent agenda.
Item 4.1, approve the following appointments or reappointments to boards or commissions. Rasha Thomas to the East Lansing Independent Police Oversight Commission for a partial term ending December 31st, 2025. Stephanie Horton to the East Lansing Independent Police Oversight Commission for a partial term ending December 31st, 2024. Sean Nicholson to the East Lansing Public Library Board of Trustees for a full term ending June 30th, 2028. Item 4.2, approve a request from Katherine Cusick, Housing Commissioner, for a leave of absence from June 23rd through September 23rd. Item 4.3, approve a resolution acknowledging mental health workers for their aid to the community on February 13th, 2023, and thereafter. Item 4.4, approve a resolution acknowledging the impact of the February 13th, 2023 MSU event. Item 4.5, approve a resolution recognizing city staff for their support after the February 13th, 2023 shooting at Michigan State University. Item 4.6, approve a resolution designating Ronald Lacoste as the City of East Lansing Street Administrator. Item 4.7, approve street closures for the MSU Homecoming Parade on September 22nd, 2023, including Abbott Road from Bertram to Grand River from 5:30 to 7:15 p.m., Grand River between Abbott and Farm Lane from 5:30 to 7:15 p.m., and 7 additional streets listed in this request from 2:30 p.m. to approximately 7:15 p.m. Item 4.8, approve street closures for the Juneteenth celebration march on Sunday, June 18th, 2023, including portions of Abbott Road, Oak Hill Avenue, and Evergreen Avenue from 10:30 a.m. until approximately 1 p.m. Item 4.9, approve a resolution adopting a final project plan for the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund and designating Ron Lacoste as an authorized project representative. Item 4.10, approve a change order with Tetra Tech for additional services associated with the 2020 Clean Water State Revolving Fund project plan amendment in the amount of $50,000 and authorize the city manager to sign. Item 4.11, approve a change order with Tetra Tech for the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund project plan for the Red Cedar Area Water Tower Siting Study in an amount of $54,000 and authorize the city manager to sign. Item 4.12, approve a conditional Class 3 rental license with one additional condition for 538 Virginia Avenue, allowing up to 2 unrelated persons or a family to occupy the property. The owners are Shara and Paul Grashik of DeWitt. Item 4.13, set a public hearing for the June 20th, 2023 City Council regular meeting to consider a site plan and special use permit application from BL Mash East Lansing LLC to renovate the building at 212 Albert Avenue and expand the existing restaurant with a new Class C liquor license. And item 4.14, approve the 2024 to 2029 capital improvements program.
Thank you. I'll move approval of the consent agenda. Look for a second.
Second.
Moved by Mayor Bacon, second by Councilperson Watson. Further discussion? Yeah. I just want to give a quick commentary as well on the points made in here to our mental health professionals. Obviously, at this point, I was just in my mind, I call it second responders to all the city staff and everyone who came after our first responders' response, as well as the community and the outpouring of love and workers that we always have when something occurs or when there's a crisis. I just want to honor and thank you as well for your swift response, allocation of resources, support for neighbors and families, and just kind of doing what East Lansing does best when things are difficult. And I just want to honor and thank you very much for that support in that capacity during such a tough time, and ask that we continue in those roles and use the lessons of that time on how to support each other, particularly in this area of mental health, which obviously we know, particularly for all the community and particularly our young people, is in an absolute state of crisis. So continue to work and engage in those areas. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Consent agenda passes. Next up, item 5.1, public hearing. In accordance with the ordinance number 1206 for property owners in the hazardous sidewalk project to contest the need for sidewalk repair. Furthermore, consideration of a resolution to order the repair of sidewalk at the locations included on the list attached with the request.
As the mayor stated, we're here to have the public hearing for the hazardous sidewalk, and And Stephen and I are here in case any questions arise or you have any concerns.
Perfect. Based on that, at this time, we'll open the public hearing.
Yes, my name is Rona Sijic. I'm at 10 University Drive as a part of this hazardous sidewalk issue. I just wanted to say we've had various meetings and discussions regarding this. However, I do still have issues with the portions of the sidewalk. Regarding the portions of the sidewalk where it was agreed that the city trees had in fact vertically displaced portions of my sidewalk and my neighbors, it was agreed that the city would, of course, pay for that. My issue is the other portions of the sidewalk that are aggregate sidewalks, since this is an historic neighborhood. This, as I walk through East Lansing and various areas, these aggregate sidewalks are very common because by aggregate I mean the stones were mixed basically with the concrete, and you can see the tiny little stones in them, as opposed to a brand new sidewalk that was maybe put in last year. My issue is that I believe these sidewalks are perfectly safe. In a few occasions, there are maybe tiny marble-sized holes that might be in these sidewalks that I've noticed throughout the city as I walk through. In my particular sidewalk, I've added Quikrete to those to fill in those little tiny portions to eliminate any sort of problem with maybe someone walking in high heels down the sidewalk. They won't put a high heel in any of those holes. So they've been filled, and so what I'm continuing is that I think these are perfectly acceptable with those holes filled, and the sidewalk is perfectly safe. That's my issue with that.
Is that?
Okay.
Thank you.
Excuse me. My name is Lori Dunlap. I live at 1035 Chesterfield Parkway. And like Rona, some of the squares of sidewalk in front of my house are the older sidewalk. And we did have Lori and Cliff and Justice come out and talk to us about them. And she took a couple of mine off that I have to pay for because she, after we discussed it, there really wasn't anything wrong with them. They're just old. They don't have cracks. They weren't displaced, anything. But there are still others in front of my house that I would say are perfectly fine. They're just old. But at least she took some of them off, and we got some disputes about trees that were initially said to be property owner tree that they realized were actually city tree, so we didn't have to pay for them. But given that, it's still thousands of dollars, okay? And I understand from talking with them, the people that we met with, they don't have anything to do with the payoff period of time, that has to be something decided by you all. And one person I talked to in my neighborhood who has a $6,000 assessment on his property said he'd like a 10-year payoff. He's a new homeowner. He was just like totally blown away by that this could even happen. So in my email that I sent to City Council and to, I believe I said it to the city manager as well, I was requesting a 5-year payoff. Could this be extended from 3 years to 5 years to help people like myself, senior citizens, people on fixed incomes, given the expense that this is, a 5-year payoff would be easier for us all in this time where the cost of everything is going up. And when you're living on a fixed income, having this additional burden of thousands of dollars that needs to be paid off even in a 3-year period of time is a lot. So that's what I'm requesting. If it could be considered to be a 5-year term, I think that would help a little bit. Or even if the city budget would allow to help subsidize some of these costs for the people that have payments that are in the thousands of dollars. So that's my request. Thank you.
Douglas Crone, I've got a variety of properties. I'm sorry, if this came to my office, it did not get to me. And I came here for something for the DMV tonight, but I've got several properties that I'd like to meet with Mr. Lacasse on that are 211 Ann Street, 213 Ann Street, 213 East Grand River, 431, 437, 439 Grand River, and the rest of the page from 551 Grand River. 565 is a 4-year-old building that we redid the sidewalks complete with brick, and I mean it's got the swervy brick in it. So I'm sorry, I guess I did not know about this campaign that was going on. So if I could at least have those properties excluded for right now out of this vote. And Mr. Lacasse, could we get together on this?
Are these all addresses you noticed in the agenda that you just quoted?
I'm sorry?
Are the addresses you just quoted all ones listed from the agenda that you noticed?
Yeah, I didn't know this was, I came here for something else tonight, but
I don't think those
I don't think
properties
any
are.
of your
Yeah.
properties are on this
Yeah.
list that we have. For
I'm just reading what I printed off this morning.
Yeah, let me say it again. I don't think any of those properties are on the list that we have tonight, that we're deliberating on tonight.
Okay,
It may be a different list you have. It may come up at some other time, but I'm, with all due respect to you, I'm not seeing those properties.
okay.
There's nothing on Ann Street. This is all Chesterfield. No, this is all the Chesterfield
Okay.
neighborhood.
Well, this just printed off with, when I printed off the minute, or the agenda for the tonight's meeting.
Yeah, I don't know what you're looking at, but
Okay.
it's not what we're looking at.
All right, well, that's why I got up and I figured,
I
whoa,
understand.
what's going
I
on?
understand.
Because especially a 4-year-old sidewalk, I mean,
Yeah, we're not there yet.
okay, all right.
Well, thank you.
So, thank you.
Public comment? All right, seeing none. Online?
There are no callers online.
All right. At this time, we'll close the public hearing. Any questions from council?
Well, I have a question for the city attorney. Is my understanding correct that if there's a slip and fall on a sidewalk like this, the city under Michigan law has liability and not the property owner?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Has everybody submitted their sidewalk response form?
Not everybody at this time.
What would you say it's at, like 50%, 90% responses?
I think it was probably closer to 50%, but we always follow up with an additional letter to try to get all the responses.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions? I think. Oh, go ahead, Ron. Were you done? I'll ask a quick one.
Go ahead.
Just on the it was a good question. This can be afterwards on the multi-year payoff system. Does that fall under you guys, or would that be finance, or who do we? Finance? We talk about that?
Correct.
Okay.
I think it was extended for the 3-year somewhat recently within the last few years.
Okay. Yeah, maybe we could do something a little more robust with that. I remember this conversation.
Yeah, it came up, Chesterfield was divided into 2 different parts, so we've already done sidewalk improvements in one part, is that correct, last year? And I think at that point, the payoff period was extended from 1 to 3 years. And so I feel like we've got a bit of a problem brewing if we now extend it to 5 years, because we just told half of the neighborhood that they only have 3 years. I think I do recognize this, and actually after our first meeting in Chesterfield, I went out and looked at my own sidewalk and realized that I am going to have a lovely letter at some point, because mine is also not in great shape. And so, I mean, especially some of these lots, I'm assuming maybe they're corner lots that have a lot more sidewalk, and it does disproportionately affect some people. I don't know if I think it would be nice if there was some way that we could identify, just let people know that this is a responsibility before it gets this bad, is kind of like for the future. I don't know, can we build that into our future planning of kind of doing this more often? I know that we're doing it more aggressively now because we have infrastructure funds to address our portions of it. I don't know.
I mean, if you want the history of it, I mean, this was a program that I was involved in 1999 when it was first kind of envisioned, and it was actually a 5-year hazardous sidewalk program.
Back in 1999.
And we still have not been through the city once.
So your 5-year program is like pushing 50-year program at this point.
It's much more costly, and at that time, the sidewalk ramp standard was not what it was. The truncated domes weren't there. So as we're doing this, we also tackle those concerns, and those can be as much as $8,000 per corner. So
that's the city portion.
Yep, those
of
are the
front
ramps.
sidewalk,
So it takes a lot of dollars to do that. So it's our 5-year program. We're still trying to work our way through the city the first time. So to do it more often would be considerably more cost.
Yeah.
I think I definitely see your point. I think I just ask an easier ask that we just aggressively communicate. I know how it is when people don't feel communicated with the letter. So for 50%, that we try to get as close to full connection as possible. So I remember this subject before.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next up, item 5.2, considerations.
Do we need to vote on that?
Action on the resolution.
Did we need an action?
If we can close the public hearing, and
still
then,
sitting
Ron,
Yeah.
do we need to take action on that resolution?
Was there action due?
Okay.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So when is the 12 months up for the people that choose the 1 year? Or has it began yet?
You'll have to bear with me a little bit because it's been a while since I've been involved in this program. What we typically do is we'll have the sidewalk constructed, we'll get the bills from the contractor, and then we'll actually calculate the actual bill. This is an estimate based on past costs and what we expect the future to be. Once we bill them, I believe the 12 months comes from there. And I would look to Audrey to help me out. There's a period where if they don't pay, it'll end up on their tax bill if they don't pay. But I don't know exactly how far out that is.
So if they choose the 1 year, could it end up on their tax bill after 1 year, or their property tax bill?
If it remained unpaid, yes.
And are some folks who haven't responded getting defaulted to a 1 year or a 3 year?
There was a letter sent out saying that if this was the second correspondence letter from last year, that they would be defaulted to 1 year payment. This year, however, we included that 1 year and 3 year option
don't respond, it defaults to it would.
That was the last 22 program. This upcoming one, it's not there yet.
Yeah, the letter requests them to respond, but I don't know as we've gone through that process. If people don't respond at all, what they'll end up with.
Say that last sentence, please.
I don't know if we've gone down that road yet. If people don't respond at all to the letter, we want them
Okay.
to fill out the response and choose, and we'll reach out a second time and try to get people to respond and have to make a decision on what we're going to default to if they don't respond.
Thank you. Yeah. I see their hands raised. I think they might have the answer.
Yes, we have the answer.
Sorry, go ahead.
The letter said we had to respond by April 15th, I believe it was, before we even, or March 15th, before we even had the opportunity to protest anything, to come and talk to you people. The letter said we should have already responded in our neighborhood. And so we raised that as a concern with the people we talked to. Like, it was a pretty threatening letter that came. And then we were told, oh, it's okay, don't worry about it. You have all this time to respond. So myself, I haven't responded yet. Rona hasn't responded.
I haven't
don't know,
responded.
Because we didn't know what the outcome was. You know, we're coming and asking you, could it be a 5-year payoff? You know, I'm not going to sign the thing and sign it and say I'm going to agree to pay in 3 years if I could have the potential of paying it in 5. So a lot of us have not turned them in, even though it's stated we needed to turn them in 2 months ago.
Thank you.
And it's not like we're not willing to pay this. It's just, but we don't want it to all of a sudden get a letter saying, oh, it's now defaulted, it's on your taxes. It needs to be more clear. Is the city going to pay for more of those aggregate sidewalks? Are you waiting? We've heard that we're waiting until the sidewalk gets built, whenever that happens down the road, and you'll get an invoice as to what you owe. That could be a year or two, whenever that happens. You know, it's very unclear what this response form wants us to do.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I move the resolution to order the repair of sidewalk at the locations included in the attached list, which I believe is the 4 pages starting at page 301 of my agenda items, and essentially starting with parcel number 33-20-01-13-124-016 at 146 Chesterfield Parkway, and going through parcel 33-20-01-13-123-004 at 10 University Drive.
Second. Further discussion? Moved by Councilperson Brookover. Let me put it in. Moved by Councilperson Brookover, second by Mayor Bacon. Clarification.
Is it possible to ask that council receives an update when we're at a clear 12-month mark, and that we do not take action on property tax bills until 36 months, seeing as it's an option, which means 100% of the people could have chosen 3-year installments. But my request again is, can council get an update on where we're at, who's paying, who's written in, who hasn't, at the 12-month mark? And then can we not take action on property taxes until the 36-month mark, seeing as 100% of the people could have chosen 3 years anyway?
Question about the process. Maybe Ron's coming up to speak to that, but as I was listening to the public comments, it appeared that there was the opportunity to appeal and discuss, and that there was some negotiations are back and forth between staff and particular property owners, which leads me to believe that it's possible that the 12-month timeline may not start at the same time for everyone if there are other appeals, but I'm not certain if that's accurate or not.
The process is very spelled out in the ordinance of what we're supposed to follow, which is what we followed. It was changed 8-10 years ago to include this appeal process. So that's the process we're going through now. This effectively ends that. This is the last step of the appeals process, is to come before council, and those that did administrative review with the engineering department preserve the right to speak in front of council. So this is the end of the appeal process. But we can certainly provide an update on bills after a year. To carry it, to obviously not make, to not put it on their taxes for 3 years means the city would have to carry that cost for 3 years. And it's a general fund expenditure, so that's just the reality of doing that.
Do you, Mr. Lacoste, do you have an estimate about, I mean, I know we've got an estimate of the city's total cost, but have we added up the residents' total cost to see what that liability might be to carry forward?
It's on the spreadsheet. I think it's 305,000, something like that. There's a resident column and a city column.
Yeah, it says,
And again, that's estimated. If we pull up squares and find city true routes underneath it, we switch it from property owner to city and things like that. So it typically moves a little bit.
Got it.
Would it also be possible to send a clarifying letter or communication that explains that since the public hearing has been held, that the opportunity to sign up for the 1 or 3 year payment would be extended to this date, whatever that date is, and then from there we would proceed?
I'm trying to have like consideration both as our responsibility as fiduciary people for the city and also for the comfort and health of our residents. This is not the first, so this is the second large section that has come before council during my time, and I'm just adding up $300,000 costs as we go. I know we've got planned to move into the Bailey neighborhood in the next couple of years, and so I'm just a little bit concerned that by the time we move through the neighborhoods that we've got planned with the ARPA funds that we've designated for this, that the total strain on the city's general fund by the time we get through 10 more years of hazardous sidewalks could be into the millions. And it would be preferable to have people, if they can afford to pay early. But I know that I tend not to pay my bills until I get the second notice, because that's just how my life is structured at the moment. So so I don't know, I'm kind of, I don't want to just, especially some of these people that have got $6,000, dollar estimates. I don't necessarily want to just default to them, adding to them to their taxes in the next fiscal year, if we can give them a small amount of grace. But I also don't want to automatically extend the 3 year to every household. And I don't really see
Our intent is to certainly try to get as many responses as we can. I think we
Yeah.
typically do get the majority of them back.
Okay.
We would like to know their preference. Some people would rather rip the Band-Aid off and pay it, and some people would rather extend, and that's our preference, is to follow their choice.
Thank you. And part of my thought process is that some are going to pay. And this is just asking that city council not take action as far as putting it on people's property taxes. And I must say, I have my own income, and it's just my income. I might be middle class, but trying to afford to live in the city of East Lansing costs a lot of money. And if I got a bill like this, that's like a credit card payment for me, and I wouldn't be able to do $6,000 in 12 months. I wouldn't want to do it in 36 months. So I just am thinking about, like people talk about, the fixed income, people that don't have dual incomes, people that can't cough up over $1,000 just like that without taking other hits. And if there's something that we can do as a council, which is not attach it to their property taxes for 36 months, when we've given them that option anyway, I think and with a follow-up in 12 months to see where we're at, and also see if possibly there's a problem with communication, how we're relaying it, but also maybe you'll come back in 12 months and 80% of the people will have paid, and so then we just still kind of didn't act on the property taxes piece of it. But that's my thought process.
I'll throw in, I think just to, we review this down the road, kind of like, it feels a lot like deer, that we just kind of review, an overall process review, like get a little separation from right now on it, and then just look at what the response level was, what the, whole payment level was, how many were, and we look at the numbers maybe from a finance perspective, and then we evaluate it that way versus trying to, this seems like we're just guessing unless we have some real, something in front of us.
We've heard frequently, and I do understand what it's like to get official mailers, with official language. When we mail a document to a homeowner, it's essentially a legal document, and it has to have the weight of a legal document, so we don't have a lot of wiggle room in terms of making the language more comfortable. But this is a constant complaint that we hear whenever these letters go out to anyone, that they just feel that they're threatening, and nobody likes to get a $1,000 bill that they weren't expecting. So just, as we kind of continually urge, if we could try to be as clear and as comforting as possible in those cases, and while still maintaining our what we need to communicate legally to them. So that would be
we can
nice too.
revisit that. This was all that legal language. This was
Yeah.
drafted per 2 city attorneys ago.
Yeah.
So we could certainly have that reviewed again to make sure we have the language in there, and if there's ways we can.
And
but
just make
that's-
sure that the process, that people
Yep.
understand the process and their rights, and when the appeal dates are and all that stuff, and also knowing that people don't necessarily open every letter with the city seal on it. But I just have a question about what we have on the table before us. So we've had this moved by Mr. Brookover, and then I'm trying to I guess what I'm asking is, do we need to have an amendment because of Councilmember Watson's request about the 36 months before it's added to the property taxes, or is that something that we will take care of in a different process? Do we need to move that as part of this movement?
So under ordinance 38-123 and 38-124, the process is exactly what you said. So we have already gone through the administrative process. This was the opportunity for the appeal of all the people on the 4 pages that Councilman Brookover referenced. There are only 2 that perfected the administrative appeal and then showed here tonight. So the motion that's up is just that what was moved, which is the ordinance or the resolution as presented, which would move everything onto everyone's tax rolls, and then it's administratively handled where we do the public reach out to see if they want it as 1 year or 3 years. So I think if there was a request by council that everyone would automatically be put on 3 years, whether they wanted to or not, that would need to be a separate resolution.
Okay, so we can vote on what we have on the table, but then in order to accomplish Councilmember Watson's goal, we would need to have a separate resolution, at least temporarily amending our ordinance.
And it's really not in the ordinance. I
Okay,
think there was
that's
a
just-
policy resolution that was done subsequently, but I don't have that one in front of me.
Okay.
But it would be a
So
separate
perhaps, is that
action.
something, Dana, could you work with Mr. Chubb to get that into a form that we could vote on at our next council
At the
meeting?
next meeting?
Does that
Absolutely.
seem okay? All right.
Yes. And just the
Thank you.
broad policy, and Councilperson Watson as well, if he can, even if it's not the next meeting, if we could look at the broad, maybe we can handle it all at once.
Yeah, and maybe you could, since you are now 2 city attorneys, more recent than the one that drafted this letter, if you could take a look at it and see if we can gentle it somewhat and just let people know what their options are, and
Absolutely.
before we send out another round.
Thank you, Ron.
Okay.
Does it- We got left to vote?
I think,
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks for your patience, Matt. All right. Consideration of special assessment, roll number 77, Downtown Management Board project.
I'm losing the anticipation of walking up and leading up to it. So, hi, Council. Matt Apostle, Community and Economic Development Specialist with the city. This is the second and final public hearing on the proposed DMB Special Assessment Roll number 77. And following this public hearing, this item will be up for consideration by Council. I know we've discussed this topic a few times over the past few months, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have or provide clarification where I can. One thing, I just want to thank the members of the Downtown Management Board for their hard work in discussing and crafting this proposal since this past August, and for all their work marketing downtown East Lansing as a destination to live, work, play, and invest. Thanks so much. Feel free to open up the public hearing.
Thank you. At this time, we'll open the public hearing.
I apologize for my first time up here, because I thought, that I figured.
Public, you can say whatever you want.
Oh, all right. So I apologize for that. What I print was attached, and I figured, what is going on with sidewalks? Anyway, I do appreciate the people that are on the Downtown Management Board. I did it myself for about 8 or 10 years, I believe, and I know their activities. I know what they deal with. Their current budget right now is about $50,000, a little over $50,000. They're proposing one for $114,000. They have, that's about a $64,000 increase, or 227%. As I said before when I spoke 2 weeks ago, 227% is a huge increase. It's not realistic, in my opinion. Our downtown businesses are going to be tough a lot of them are going to be difficult to afford that at this point in time. That's over 9% of the, I'm trying to read my notes. There's 9% of the budget that is just to be determined. I mean, the very bottom line, the $14,000 or $10,410, excuse me. So it's 20% of the current budget, because if you take $10,000 on $50,000, that's a 20% increase on just as to be determined. So the budget got expanded somehow. I don't know how that happened, but it really grew a lot. The timing I don't feel is appropriate, as I just said. I cannot believe the DMB is even asking for this at this point in time. As I said last time, 2 weeks ago, there's a lot of vacancies downtown. I'm dealing with some myself. As I also said, the few properties that I have which are a good part of downtown, are $6,000, just over and above what I'm paying right now. We were talking about sidewalks just a minute ago, $1,000 here, $1,000 there, $6,000 across businesses. Some of them are struggling. I would recommend a realistic increase. Taxes are based on, this is a special assessment, but taxes, real estate taxes are, if I remember correct, are 5%. Or inflation, whichever's less. This is 227%. That's a huge increase again. I do understand that the DMB has not raised their budget in a long time. That's a mistake that was made. It should have been 5%, 2%, 3% as time has gone on. 25, 30 years ago, we wouldn't be in this position right now. It would be a small increase and nobody be here talking about why it's going up so much. There is not a business plan. There's a budget. Whenever I've done anything, I have a business plan and a budget. The two need to go together. There needs to be a return on their investment. I can't tell what their return on their investment's been in the last 5 years. If they've spent money, has it been productive? I assume it's, this I do not know, but I assume it's probably in the ordinances, but why are the city city properties that are retail properties not having to pay towards this also. They're benefiting from it. So I'll just close very simple. It's a huge hit for properties to take right now that are in the retail and commercial businesses downtown. Any questions from my part?
Thank you. Public hearing's open.
Good evening. I'm Alicia Southern with Risky Studios at 301 MAC. We have been open for a little over a year now, and we have greatly benefited from the things that the Downtown Management Board has done. I definitely understand about taxes and increases and the fact that it has not been done since I was 8. And so I get it. But without some of these increases in some kind of way, we wouldn't have been able to expand our business in such a short amount of time. So I definitely support what the Downtown Management Board is proposing. I think we might need to get more information on it, like the person before me said, to get a business plan and have a little more context, a little more like a solid plan to go along with the proposal. But I definitely appreciate the support of Downtown East Lansing and Council and Downtown Management Board for the support of our business.
Thank you. Public hearing is open. Seeing no more, the public hearing is closed. Any questions for Matt?
Matt, is there a business plan for the expenditure of this money?
So we have the Downtown Management Board as well as the Downtown Development Authority have both been guided over recent years by the Economic Development Strategic Plan that was passed through City Council. That's been our guiding document. And in terms of data and metrics, we are constantly getting community business feedback on each of our programs and initiatives, garnering ideas, as well as our social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of those have really good social stat metrics that we can show the benefits directly of the work of the DMB, because a lot of that is on socials. So yes.
So social media is the prime source of the statistics?
I wouldn't call it the prime source of the statistics, but it's an element of the DMBs, considering they're the marketing arm, and a lot of marketing has to do with social media. And then community feedback, business feedback.
So is there a budget right now for the expenditure of this money?
Yes, there is. The DMB has not passed a budget, I should clarify, for the increase, because the increase hasn't been approved. But this would go to the DMB in June, and they have seen draft budgets based on, oh, well, if we got this increase, if we had this allocation, et cetera, kind of different scenarios.
So the budget they're working on, do they work on a fiscal year budget or an annual budget, annual year budget?
It's a fiscal year budget.
Okay,
It'd be for
so-
fiscal year 24, just
So
like us.
the budget they're working on right now is fiscal year, is the year 22, 23?
So currently we're in fiscal year 23, so the DMB is also in fiscal year 23, yes.
Okay. So this new budget would apply to what years?
It'd be fiscal year 24. The special assessment resolution would be for a 5-year period, though. So these, the proposed special assessment done by David Lee in assessing would be for 5 years if approved by council.
Okay. And anybody can come to the budget sessions and object to the budget and voice their opinion about what the money is used for?
Yes, it's a public meeting.
Okay.
It's primarily business owners.
And there's
or
no
board members.
statutory or ordinance requirement that the money be used right away or anything, correct?
I guess I need clarification on that.
Well, could they put the money in the bank and not spend it for like 6 months while they're figuring out what they want to do with it?
I would say, yeah, I mean, primarily with the DMB, a lot of your expenses come at the end of the year because you get Albert Alfresco coming up, so there's a lot of expenses related to promotional signage, social media, videos, marketing, arms, etc.
So this is for DMB?
It's for the Downtown Management Board,
Okay.
yes.
And a lot of their expenses are with,
Related to the marketing and promotion of downtown East Lansing. They do that through
To
social
Alfresco?
media.
to Alfresco?
They do have a lot of expenses related to Albert Alfresco.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I will say you guys bury the lead a little bit. I don't think we even had a social media presence prior to the last couple of years, correct?
Just nobody watched it.
Yeah, I remember seeing the escalation of that. So it actually is a viable marketing tool now. I don't think it was a couple of years ago, if I remember the old numbers. What was it again? Absolutely not in 1997. I know it's gone
When you
from
were 7 years old.
Yeah, yeah. I know it's gone from nothing to something, which is a new expense. I know that part of it for sure. All right. Questions for Matt?
I don't have a question for Matt because I serve on the DMB. I wanted to put some of the numbers into context. It is a very large increase, but it is a very large increase of a very small number. I ran, just based on my experience of downtown, our average retail bays are about 1,500 square feet, which, if we're using the new higher assessment, would put their cost to this new thing, assuming that it is passed through from the property owner to the renter if they have a triple net lease, which not everyone does, but I think everyone also has leases that incrementally go up every year. It's just kind of what happens. So this would be $120, which would be an increase of about 50%, or what is it right now? 4 cents per square foot, and we're going to 8?
It depends on the floor.
Okay, so anyway, the new number, which is not which also includes what they're currently paying, would be $120 a month, which is $10 a month. So the amount of money that we're talking about, and those bays go for, let's see, 1,500 times, I'm using $18 a square foot as an average downtown rent, which is on the low side, is about $2,200 a month. So we're talking about a $10 increase on a $2,200 rent. This is obviously like very back of the envelope math. And I don't want anybody who has different rent to call me on it, but that was just to kind of put it into context. So it's a very tiny amount. I will also share just anecdotally that while I served as mayor last year, I had to hire out my social media. So I hired somebody for $500 a month to manage my social media. So it is a shockingly small amount of money for the amount of marketing that the DMV does on behalf of downtown, which benefits all of the businesses within the district. I also want, before we move this to a vote, and since I'm already talking, I just wanted to proclaim my standard conflict of interest whenever we talk about businesses downtown, which is that I am a business owner within this district. I benefit from this money. And the festival that I host downtown is marketed by the DMB and includes some of the city. I think we borrow the picnic tables and a few other things. So I do not benefit from that festival. I bear the costs of that festival. There's no merchandise of mine out on the street. We do all of the vendor communication to bring those small business people downtown. And really my goal in hosting it is to prove to other small businesses that they have a market here and to invite them into East Lansing and to help them incubate the way that I was incubated by an existing downtown business. So it's my little pay it forward project, but it is also marketed by the DMV. So if my fellow council members want me to recuse myself from this vote, you all will have to vote on it. That's something that you all have to decide, but happy to if that's what's decided. I will say I did talk to the city attorney, and he said that it's the same, it's the conflict of interest that I have whenever I vote on anything in the terms of East Lansing, because I live in East Lansing. So anyway, and I'm happy to answer questions as a member of the DMB.
Man, I have another question. So my recollection, because I think I've seen this notice that went out on this thing, that went to some of the merchants. But if I understood what you said tonight, at some point, the management board has looked at potential budgets if this increase is granted, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
Can
And
I
so-
add some context to that Matt might not be comfortable adding? Finish your statement. Mr.
Whatever you want to
Brookover,
say,
but
go ahead.
So last year, the DMB was given an allocation from the DDA's budget that would bring the $50,000 that the DMB gets from this assessment up to approximately the amount that would be the DMB's budget if they get this assessment. So they were operating with this budget last year, and you can see what it was spent on if you look at the DMB's budget, which is public. Because of the refinancing with the DDA projects, the DDA has decided not to specifically allocate that $50,000 this year because they need to keep that money within their own coffers. So if this is not passed, the DMB would functionally have a 50% budget cut for the next year.
Well, if I could get to my question then.
Yep.
So my question is, when you sent out these notices to the potential payors, did you send them a copy of what the proposed budget would be with the increase?
I did not send them a line item proposed budget.
It's not you,
because-
it's we, but okay, so,
Yes.
yeah, so they didn't really have any notice of what the money would be used for.
Aside from the informational piece we providing them kind of a broad overview of all, actually kind of a detailed list of every project that they worked on in fiscal year '23 to kind of give them a sense for the variety of work that they do, just because the DMB hasn't approved a budget, so we weren't going to give them a proposal that
Okay,
had
so-
been voted on.
So the council person was just talking about, in effect, this would be a replacement for this money. Is that all it is, or is there more?
If you compare the two numbers, so the total revenue is around $100,000 this year for the DMB, if you include the DMB special assessment, an allocation from the parking department, as well as an allocation from the Downtown Development Authority, and that's for fiscal year '23. And then the DMB special assessment, let me make sure I get the number right. If approved, they would get $109,260 annually from the special assessment, and then they would get another $5,000 from parking as a
Right,
marketing allocation.
You lost me in there. So the bottom line numbers, if they got the increase, the bottom line number with the increase is what compared to what it was this last year?
It'd be about, if we got the approved increase, it would be about $14,000 more.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Thanks, Jesse. I understand. I thank you for saying.
Yeah, no problem.
And then Matt, I guess the long-term question, will the future increases not be like this long? Will they be tied to inflation? What's going to be the plan moving forward?
That'd be the plan, yeah. And part of the reason why it is slightly more than what was the annual budget for fiscal year '23 is just the thought that different councils might vote differently, just the sense of perhaps we might not get another increase for another 10 years, just because of the political nature of all of this.
Well, I'm going to reluctantly vote yes, but I do feel like at a certain level, we sort of put the cart before the horse. And so, I think the people who pay this money, ultimately, I think it's the merchants, not the landowners, but I could be wrong there. I think when they're apprised of something like that, they also should have the budget information. And I understand they can go on the website and they can figure all that out, just like the people with the sidewalks can go and look up the ordinance and stuff like that. But the reality is people don't do that. And I just think that would be helpful in the future if we're going to kind of do this at this level, even though it's minuscule compared to the rest of the budget. I think it would be nice to send people, especially business people who have to balance their budgets, I think it would be nice to send them something that says, look, this is what we're going to do with this money. or tentatively, if we get this passed. So that's all.
He's just saying over-communicate.
Always.
Yeah. Any more questions for Matt? Thank you.
I was actually
Or you are.
curious, Mayor Pro Tem's math, is that close to accurate?
I haven't ran the numbers on particular parcels, but there is a document attached to the agenda item report. It's the entire roll that we've been working off of since March to April that can tell you, you can look up an individual parcel and see what the current rate is, and then you can also see what it was.
Is that what you did, Mayor Pro Tem?
No, so I use the market rate rent downtown, which is not something that exists. It's sort of a average of my amateur research, I guess, as a curious business owner. I know what I pay in rent. I know what other rents are downtown. So what I was trying to do is reflect the increase, assuming, so this is based on the property tax roll. So this is assessed to the property owner. The assumption is that it will be passed on to their tenants. And so I was trying to represent what it would be like from a tenant perspective, since that had been expressed as a concern.
Yes, because I will clarify that, like, if you looked at some of these numbers, they are large, but it also could be a property that has 10 tenants.
Right. Like the Marriott apartment would be, like, not the apartment, but the condo association attached to the Marriott would be assessed primarily at the second floor rate. They would have the two bays that are on the bottom would have the 8 cents per square foot, and then all of the offices above would have the 4 cents per square foot. So if you look at it as a total amount, it's a huge amount, although it is capped because we cap the large tenants downtown, of which the Marriott is one. But then you have to assume that it will be spread out over all of the tenants in that building at their square foot rates.
Thanks.
All right, I think, any further questions? All right, I think you're clear.
Awesome, thanks. I think we are looking for a motion, but I can.
Yeah. I think you're clear, though.
And then just to be extra clear, according to our charter, if you guys do want to recuse me from this vote, it has to be, you all have to vote on it and it has to pass. So if you want to do that, this would be the time to do that.
Seeing no motion, I think that's a no.
Sounds good.
All right, I'll look for a motion on,
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve resolution of special assessment roll number 77.
I'll look for a second.
Second.
Moved by Councilperson Watson, second by Councilperson Garcia. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, item 6.1, consideration of fiscal year 2024 budget, tax rate, and fee schedule resolution.
Good evening, Council. Audrey Kincaid, Deputy Finance Director. We are finally at the culmination of the fiscal year 24 budget process. So before we have our final questions on the budget, I just once again want to thank all directors and staff for supporting finance and my department getting this document across the finish line. It is a massive effort and undertaking, and I want to thank everyone again for the support and thank council and city manager for the engagement throughout this entire process.
Thank you very much. Councilperson Garcia, did you have something?
Yeah. First of all, I wasn't here last week, and I did watch how the meeting went. I just want to thank you, Finance Director Audrey Kincaid, for making it understandable to me, the new guy. That's not an easy task. You did a wonderful job. All department heads, their presentations, I was impressed. I understood it. I'm going to learn. I'm going to learn more in this next year, and next year I'll be better. I guess have more knowledge. Of all the presentations, which were wonderful, I think a lot of our city staff are doing more with less. It's very obvious of that. I recall Chief Johnson's budget proposal presentation. I recall his passion. I recall his emotions. And he mentioned a lot of things that they were doing in that realm of community policing, which I'm a big advocate for. I was a community policing officer in the city of Lansing for many years. I worked with youth and sports. As youth engagement officer, I love that idea. His department is already doing community policing, in my opinion. I think they were well on a track to improving and doing more. But one thing that didn't set well with me is that he kept mentioning these initiatives, which I'll mention some of them, peace officers, 2 of them, that are being taken from the road. Police administration position for PACE, 1 officer. Downtown business officer, 1 officer. Community engagement officer have not refilled since a promotion. And then he mentioned the youth engagement officer. I know how that feeling is, taken from the road. It's easy to do that. I worry about that. I saw videos of the St. Patrick's Day downtown, the amount of people that were down there, and I only saw 2 officers in that video walking through a large crowd. I worry about their safety. We have the Arts Festival, we have other events, we have the Final Four, we have football nights, Albert Alfresco. We have all these great initiatives, and we're asking our police officers to do it with the same amount of officers. I did reach out to get some statistics or some information, I should say, from the police department. And it looks like patrol is being used, or taken bodies from patrol. I've got some numbers here that let me share. 41 total officers on patrol. 20 and 21, so 20 in the AM or the first shift and 21 in the second shift is what their numbers should be at. Right now their numbers are 9 in the first shift and 11 in the second shift. And again, they're still dealing with some FTO, field training officers, some new hires. So in my opinion, they're slim there. And in my ride along I went on months ago, the 4 hours I was on that ride along, it was from call to call to call to call, and the officer wasn't complaining. So I guess what I'd like to see is, I know that their budget is asking for 2 more officers, which I believe those officers are just reimbursing those officers from the 2 officers they took when we brought on social workers, which I think is a great thing, and I hope we continue to do that. I'm asking for another officer to be filled in that position, so adding 1 more officer on top of those 2 officers. And I'll take any questions if anyone has any. ARPA funds?
No, I don't think we're voting on ARPA funds tonight.
Well,
So that's the whole point.
Yeah, I think if we wanted to do anything that's substantial to the budget at this point, it would have to come from fund balance. Yeah.
Let me ask this, Audrey. So, from a statutory ordinance standpoint, we passed this, but there's nothing that prevents us from amending this budget at some point during the fiscal year, is there?
No, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, Mr. City Attorney, I know you and I have talked about this, but there was some concern between you and the city manager about what I'll inartfully call a clawback from the federal government based on the budget negotiations. It's now my understanding that the 2 of you are not worried about that, and they're now saying that that can't happen, so they can't, we don't have to lock ourselves in on ARPA funds tonight, correct?
Yes, that's correct. So I was working closely with Ms. Kincaid and with the city manager. We were looking at the most recent proposal from the U.S. House of Representatives regarding amending the debt ceiling, which a portion of that did make a vague reference to clawbacks of unallocated ARPA funding. We did begin to prepare everything necessary to allocate all of our unallocated funds tonight. but subsequent guidance from the U.S. Director or Secretary of Commerce did indicate that their interpretation was once it was allocated to or provided to a state or municipality that it was allocated for purposes of their determination, so the clawbacks would not apply to our ARPA funding that we've already received.
So, Mr. Garcia, I actually agree with you, and I might even want to add 2 more positions, but I think what I understand is this is in effect a living document. And so, based on the answer on ARPA, where we don't have that threat anymore, I would move the resolution, the fiscal year 2024 budget, tax rate, and fee schedule resolution at this point in time, and then if we want to discuss stuff, we can discuss it.
I have some language and numbers prepared if you want to add 1 or 2 officers. If you want to use that language and do
I want to make the motion, which I just made. So.
I'll second,
Okay.
and then open discussion, and then speak to Councilperson Garcia. Yeah, I agree with that. I think talk to Chief as well, and really some of the points brought up even by Ron and Works and other people. I think there's a few areas that need to be shored up immediately as far as from outside the budget or even from ARPA dollars, and we'll probably talk about that outside of that. But yeah, I think there's some technological things that public safety needs as well, and I think looking even at some stuff we were looking at for fire, if particular grants and things don't come through, I think we got to revisit a few things. So I'm right there with you in support of a few projects on that end. So.
I'll just a point of process for Mr. Garcia. What we've got moved on the table by Mr. Brookover is the budget as written. If you wanted to add that as an amendment, you would have to essentially move an amendment, which would then require a second in order to change it, just process-wise. I'm cognizant, I had a similar experience to Mr. Garcia on the ride-alongs that I've done with our department. We have a very complaint-driven patrol right now just because we are very understaffed. And so officers don't have a lot of downtime on their shifts to just patrol and be present in the community, which is what we have asked them to do by putting our focus on community policing. And so I think it kind of similar to the way that we don't appreciate having unfunded mandates from the state, I think that we, are essentially giving our police force an unfunded mandate by demanding community policing and then not giving them enough officers to do it. So I think right-sizing our department is important, and recognizing that kind of hands-on model of policing is very personnel heavy. Echoing Mayor Bacon's sentiments, I think we need to right-size other departments as well. I think East Lansing has been doing more with less for a long time, and I think, I don't want to say do less with more, but I actually do want to say do less with more. I think we're very hard on our staff in terms of the work that we demand from them. And we need to recognize that maybe sometimes we need more people and fewer projects. And so I think we need to keep that in mind for all of our departments over the coming year. And I would just say to our directors that if you've got personnel that you need to hire, we are willing to open up this budget and look at that if we need to add bodies.
So my concern's a process concern. I echo what you've said. I just think it makes more sense to pass this. The staff spent now 2 months on it. We can amend it, and I guess since I do favor what you're talking about, I'd like to have maybe the city manager and the financial staff and Mr. Garcia get us something in the next couple of months in terms of a proposition on how we could use this, how the ARPA funds could or couldn't be used, things like that, because I don't want to sit here and make sausage tonight on the budget, okay? Yeah, the staff spent a lot of time doing this and in tough times and everything else, and I agree with you, Noel, but I just think we ought to pass the budget, and then we can do what we need to do, and we'll have more information about ARPA, and Randy's talked about some other things, so that's where I am tonight. I think we ought to just go ahead and pass this and move on.
I'm okay with that.
Well, and I think I'd throw back to the city manager as well. that we get some kind of analytics around it, kind of that we're not just, we're saying 2, maybe it's 10, but we're not aware based on how many doors we
Well,
have, how many, I mean, literally.
I
we
think
gotta-
if we really did a staff study, which hasn't been done here in a long, long time, you're going to see that we should be at a level in the 60s, not quite maybe a 70 strength sworn officers, but I think we'd be in the 60s for sure.
If I could share with council, and we spent time at our directors meeting just this week talking about this very issue. It's manifesting in a number of ways, not just the amount of staff, either per capita or run volume or whatever metric you use, but also looking at the fact that it's difficult to be competitive in recruitment for certain positions where there are requirements. So we're looking at like our engineering positions and the positions in economic development, having some type of assessment as to whether our salaries are competitive. There's some other reasons that or things we can do to help generate more interest. And so we will likely segregate out the wage and job study from some other conversations in ARPA, but because of the urgency, but we certainly have heard your concerns and actually spent some time having this very discussion about a process to do that. So I appreciate your comments tonight on these issues.
All right, thank you.
So
Further questions? Further discussion? All right.
I would just like to say thank you again to the finance staff and all the hard work. Thank you
And
very
thank you,
much.
Audrey, for stepping up out of your more comfortable behind-the-scenes role and joining us at the special table. It's been great.
Thank you very much, and really, yes, definitely thank everyone for the fast responses, answers to some really what ended up being silly questions maybe, but thanks for answering them and helping us move the process forward. All right, we're at that point. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, item 6.2. Yes.
Everybody go take a nap.
Good job. All right, Matt, you ready? All right. Consideration of fiscal year 2024 Community Development Block Grant, CDBG budget.
I really hope I also get an applause if this gets approved.
Absolutely.
Hi, Council. Yeah, for your consideration tonight is the fiscal year 2024 Community Development Block Grant budget. There is one change of note regarding this budget since the last time it was discussed at the public hearing. It's regarding the CDBG sidewalk project, and if members of DPW want to clarify anything regarding this as I say it, they're welcome to. But they applied for fiscal year 2024 CDBG funding for sidewalk improvements in the Southeast Marble neighborhood. However, the lowest bid for the fiscal year 2023 sidewalk project, which is on the east side of Bailey neighborhood, came in at $231,281.52, which is $86,216.52 more than the $145,065 allocated to the fiscal year 2023 project. For this reason, DPW staff are recommending that the $86,720 recommended for the fiscal year 2024 CDBG project be allocated to meeting this lowest bid for the fiscal year 2023 CDBG sidewalk project in order to complete this section of their goals for the CDBG sidewalk project generally, and then perhaps they would look at doing Southeast Marble and starting that up in their application for fiscal year 2025.
I feel like sidewalks are becoming East Lansing's new favorite subject. I used to say parking would always keep us 2 hours past our time, but I think it's sidewalks now. This is an exciting evolution of our walking-friendly community. Maybe this is...
We're a walkable city,
Yeah,
what can I
think
say?
so.
I move the CD advisory budget recommendation post HUD announcement.
Is that sufficient for the change that you just?
Yeah, because it's still
move
going to
approval. I
DPW.
move
Yep.
approval.
Matt, can you repeat the change in maybe about 3 sentences?
Without the numbers.
Yeah, I was really
Good.
trying to hit the
Hold on.
numbers so that you.
We got a motion. Can we get a second and then we'll
Yeah,
move?
second. I can second.
Okay.
Yeah, the change is that the money allocated to the CDBG sidewalk project will still be allocated to the CDBG sidewalk project. It's just for different locations than were originally applied for. They'll be to add to the locations of the previous year to ensure that that project gets completed because bids came in high.
So, and that's a presumption that they're going to continue to come in high. So we're moving into a new
Yes.
phase here.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
And what's the neighborhood change again?
It's from Southeast Marble was what the application was for to Bailey neighborhood, which the CDBG sidewalk project, if you've been following it, has been going down Albert from Collingwood or so to Hagedorn.
So like a retro.
Yeah, kind of, yeah, to fill in last year's budget because it
Yes.
was too
Overrun.
low. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's within process.
Yes, we talked to HUD about it, and they said that it would be okay because we can use a multi-year project, and we'll still be able to get it done in summer 2023.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
I do want to say, Matt, that I appreciate the care that you've taken with this process this year. It was, I believe it was Councilmember Watson's idea 2 years ago to bring back the Community Advisory Board. And I was privileged to sit in as part of that committee. And it was lovely to see people from our different commissions working together and just the consideration that people put towards the proposals. And I think that it was really nice, and you did a great job orchestrating it. Thank you.
Next up, item 6.3, approve a contract with Levitt and Stark for the CDBG Albert Avenue Phase 5 sidewalk improvements
More sidewalks. Actually, the same sidewalks revisited.
in the amount of $265,974 and authorize the city manager to sign.
Ron Lacoste, Acting Director of Public Works, and this was just moved to the business agenda and from the consent agenda because you had to approve the previous item before this could be approved. So it's basically the 23 money plus the 24 money that Matt just talked about.
I move we approve a contract with Levitt and Stark for the CDBG Albert Avenue Phase 5 sidewalk improvements in the amount of $265,974 and authorize the city manager to sign same.
Second.
Moved by Councilperson Brookover, second by Councilperson Watson for the win. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And as before we adjourn, once again, thank you to all the staff for all this hard work. I know this is most difficult. I think this is our most important responsibility as a council. This fiduciary responsibility, and that's what we're brought here to do. So thank you for all the support, all the questions answered, and all the sacrifices made to budgets, and we'll try our very best to help you and support you on things that are not included in this budget moving forward this year, as we can find different ways and different forms of finance to get some of the other special projects and things done, because I think we're going to have a really good year around funding and some other things. Things are flowing our way. So thank you very much for your time, and meeting adjourned.